great pleasure to be here in Mexico to see so many old friends, and in particular to celebrate one of the my students that I've had the pleasure dealing with, and Santiago was certainly one of them.
Yeah.
coefficient ring lambda is the same thing as the cohomology of the length space, which is for 2m plus coefficients in lambda. And so this is the topological interpretation of the cohomology. Maybe I should just leave it on there. Very difficult. It's very difficult to both write large enough that they can see and to write more than one letter. Now, Smith, first, one of his wonderful theorems is, for example, if we have P, which remember is this small group of P, P on a sphere, well, now let's take Z mod P to the R, and if it acts freely on S, is thinking of the cohomology groups all Taurel, and noticing that if we take the map of Sn into a point, P, single point, both Sn, we change the point, of course, and this is a map of these modules over G, and we can also think of the Sn. G modules, and we can make them free G modules by simply multiplying. We take U, be the universal G space, or G space. Cross U, and then we have the relative thing, P mod Sn cross U, and this is on the chain level, we get a exact sequence of free. So we would take the Borel construction, so we can just take the quotient by G in each case. And so we have exact sequence. Comes from cohomology P hat. Comes from the cohomology of P mod Sn. At these two terms, this is isomorphic with the cohomology of the group with measure coefficients, say, or whatever coefficients we please. This is here we get n, or n plus 1, I guess, added to it. We have this exact sequence. Cohomology. This is a free action, then this is, the cohomology of this is finite dimension. But the cohomology of these are G. Cohomology of G. G is a product. G is a product of ZPs, say R copies of ZP. Is isomorphic to the tensor product of the cohomology of ZP with itself. R times. So this is an exterior ring FP Y1 to Y R. Oh yeah, okay, thanks. In order that this third term in the exact sequence should be finite dimensional, we must have that the cohomology of G, the image of the cohomology of G with a shift in dimension n plus 1. So we're essentially dividing the polynomial ring times the exterior algebra by we're dividing thing generated by one collision, and we're expecting to get a finite dimensional thing. Well, that can only happen when there's only one generator, in particular for the polynomial ring. But a very simple way to see this is the following lemma. So we have x and G acts freely on x. And x has the property that the cohomology of x is finite. And suppose that the cohomology of x dot p is also finite with p equals. The dimension, the last non-zero place of the cohomology or cohomology of x. So this is the homological dimension of this. Well, that means in particular, if we look at the exact sequence here, that means that in particular, n plus 1 of G must be completely hit by H1 of G. 1 of G is just a dimension n, and Hn plus 1 of G is bigger than 1. So this eliminates any other kind of algebra you might need to use in this discussion. So that's one of the early theorems of Smith, more than 60 years old by now. Logical approach to transformation groups. Now, there are many other theorems of Smith that you can prove in a very simple way, this way without referring to any machinery. Let's go on to the next question one could ask. And that is, suppose we have that G is an elementary abelian group again, rank R. Product of spheres. Sn. And let's let I run from 1 up to K. So K spheres. So Smith did the case very efficiently. And that in particular means that, and let's say X is just equivalent to that. And that means that H, the cohomology X mod G, is in fact, that's a reasonable hypothesis to take instead of assuming that you have actual product of spheres and a free motion. Just simply that the quotient is finite dimensional homology. Which is theorem of Smith is the first instance. And the conjecture is R less than or equal to K. So is the rank of the elementary abelian group that's acting freely, is that less than the number of spheres? So there was a little progress on this in the 50s. So around 1959, I think. Is it right on the number? What is it? Heller. Yeah, is it 59? Proved that the answer is yes for K equal to 2. And this was very much in the spirit of Smith's proof based on the point of view of Borel, using spectral sequences and so forth. And Connor also contributed, I'm not sure exactly when K was equal to 2 and N1 was equal to N2. And there the matter sat for almost 20 years until we had the theorem of Carlson. And that was about 1980 something, 81 perhaps. It said if N1 is equal to N2 is equal to N3 and so forth, up to Nk, then the answer is yes. But provided that G acts trivially on homology. So that was a big step forward and the stimulus to looking at this kind of problem. And so these techniques were based on really analyzing the spectral sequence of the projection of the Borel construction on the cohomology on the classifying space of the group. Well, I was very stimulated Carlson's result, and I tried to take a slightly different point of view. And so let me describe a slightly different point of view toward this kind of a problem. So now, instead of, let's assume that X is a manifold, oriented manifold. And G is finite, acts freely, or acts, well, first freely on X. Then, well, let's forget about the free group. Let's suppose that it acts on X, and we can look at the map inclusion of X, or the quotient map, if you like, into X cross U on G, the Borel construction. Let's call it map J, and we'll define a number, which I call the exponent of X, so G, to be quotient of the cohomology, the order of the cohomology. And let's say it's M manifold. The cohomology of M modulo J star. This should be M. Modulo J star of HM of this we call X hat. So this is, of course, the integers. So this is a subgroup of the integers, and this is a number. And this number divides the order of the group. And if the G acts freely, this is the number. This equals the order of the group. Because in that case, X hat is simply homotype equivalent to the quotient. And so the quotient, the map from X to the quotient, is a map of degree order of G. It's a covering map. So put that in parentheses. So if one had a way of calculating, an easy way of calculating this exponent, it could give us some control on the order of G. Well, in fact, I managed to prove the following theorem, which is interesting. It says that, in general, if G is an elementary abelian group, always using R for the rank. If it's an elementary abelian group, then the exponent of G of X, so assuming it's an oriented manifold and so on, is equal to the order of the minimal orbit of G on X. So it says if it's a free action, then of course the minimal orbit is just the order of G. All the orbits are of size the order of G. Well, and if it's 1, that means there's a fixed point. And if it's somewhere in between, that means that you have orbits of dimension somewhere, of the order somewhere in between. So if one could calculate this exponent in a simple way, then you'd get a lot of information in many different directions. So let me describe. It's a very simple calculation of the exponent. So we have the following proposition. supposing that the cohomology HK of X is not zero. Oh, this should be with FP coefficients, or no, never mind. With Z local as the P coefficients. Suppose this is non-zero in Q plus 1 dimensions. In only, I should say, Q plus 1 dimensions. And suppose that Gx trivially acts as the identity, in other words, which is what you mean by trivial for a group action on homology of X. Then the exponent of G in X divides Q. What? Oh, e to the Q. E to the Q? Yeah, e to the Q. Divides e to the Q. Proof? Well, proof involves a little spectral sequence. I draw the spectral sequence. There are only Q non-zero lines, Q plus 1 non-zero lines, including the bottom. We're looking at this thing in the upper left-hand corner. There are only how many differentials that could be non-zero? Q differentials that could be non-zero in an element. Each one is arriving in an element. Let's say that G is a geometric unit group. So each one arrives in a group of exponent P, and so each time there's a non-zero differential, you get P times what was there before occurring, and then the E infinity term, which is the image of cohomology of the O of X hat, you get at most E to the Q. So that's very fast. And so if you don't know spectral sequence, it's not so fast. But if you do, that's very fast. But there are other more pedestrian ways to do it, but they take longer. And so supposing that X is a product of the sphere of the same dimension as n k times, then H star of X is non-zero, only for k plus 1 values of the star. Because, of course, it's the community formula which tells us that the cohomologous product is just a tensor product of these cohomologies, the little dimension n, and so it looks like the exterior algebra on K generators, dimension n. So that's only non-zero, and so this gives an immediate proof. So proofs crosses there. So that gives a very short proof of Carlson's theorem, and from different and somehow more elementary calculation, even though it takes a rather different point of view. So we shift from the technology of the calculation to the point of view, which is the thing I like to find a new point of view and eliminate some of the nasty calculations. Well, now let's look on to see if there are some extensions of this kind of result of crossing that one can make. So we're of course interested in this question that I said early on about if so the first one's impulse is to try to extend Carlson's theorem to spheres which are concentrated in 2 dimensions. So let's suppose that X is homotop equivalent or whatever, the product of K spheres of dimension n times L spheres of dimension n. What can we say about this case? So that would be, somehow, you might say that that would be the next case to consider. Well, so now let's make it a very big geometrical assumption. Suppose we have G, an elementary Abelian group of rank R, acting on X in such a way that we have a projection of X onto X0, and so we have a fiber map F, see? So F is so this is a vibration of G spaces where X naught is homotop equivalent to the product of N spheres, and X1 is homotop equivalent to the product of M spheres. Well, then one can use the theorem that I wrote down before to attack this. So we're assuming group G acts on all the 3 terms here. So this, and so if we look at, so let's recall that we have this theorem here. That says that the exponent is equal to the minimal orbit of G of X, and that and we also have the proposition about the exponent here that the exponent divides e to the cube. So therefore we can say that the exponent of G acting on X naught divides let's see, X naught is the one with n's, so that divides P to the K, and hence the minimal orbit of G on X naught is equal to P to the K. And hence, there exists a subgroup G1 of G with index G called G1 equal to P to the R minus K, which fixes a point. Fixing a point in X naught. fiber over this point, so P is a G1 space. And G1, of course, has to act freely. On X1 over P. And hence, the exponent G1 of X1 has got to be equal to P to the, what's the dimension? It's P to the K minus, P to the R minus K. And hence, this R minus, so the exponent of X1 but X1 is a product of how many spheres? Okay. 12 spheres. So the exponent, so this has to divide P to the L. So we find that the total exponent, which is just the product, so that R has to be less than or equal to K plus L. So that proves this conjecture for very special kinds of actions. And now you can extend this simple argument to a general situation. So with a general situation, where we have a sequence of vibrations, x1 x0 to x2 and so forth, where each one has fiber product of spheres ending up with x. So if we had a sequence of vibrations like this, the same argument will work inductively. But this is a very special case. And in general, there exist actions not of this type. So this is very limited there. So even though we don't have to restrict ourselves to two dimensions if we have this very strong geometrical hypothesis, it's not a universal hypothesis. It's just not true for all actions. So what can we say for all actions? Well, now, one hears a lot of, one likes to be hip. And nowadays, you can't be hip unless the word quantum is in your statement. So how am I going to quantize this problem? So I'm going to take Carlson's theorem and just move one of the dimensions slightly. Okay? So its dimension will be m plus h. That'll quantize it. So let's consider the problem where x is the homotopic type of a product of Sn, let's say, Sns and one Sn. So let's take the easiest possible case, the general case of the kind of theorem I was talking about just now, and then with more restricted geometry. And now, let's take m less than n. How would we say that physically? So we'll assume that m is less than n. state a more general theorem. Suppose that X is actually product of SNs and SNs, and I'll come back to the case where there's only one of those. And let's suppose that M is less than N. And suppose that in the spectral sequence that D n plus 1 of Hm of X, so that's the image of this part, cohomology, forms a regular sequence. It's a little technical. What does that mean? Is this Borel's notation? I.e., they generate a free, free submodule. H star G. FP coefficients. Everything is FP coefficients. Then we can prove the theorem. Then G is acting freely, and G is product of R copies of G1 of P. And then we have that or is less than or equal to K. Well, let's see. So, what happened? Well, one of the hypotheses of this theorem true? Well, for example, we can use this theorem to prove the following theorem. Suppose that L is equal, that M is equal to 1, that all the spheres of the lower dimension are one-dimensional, and of course K is bigger than 1. Then we can extend Carlson's theorem to the statement that R is less than or equal to K plus 1. Well, the problem is that of course, the differentials, this is D2 of H1 of X contained in H2 of G, all with FP coefficients. And these are integral, and so this is contained in the integral part, which is generated by line 1 up to y r. The polynomial generators of cohomology of G. Well, if they're linearly independent, they form a regular sequence. They're generators, polynomial regulators. They form a regular sequence. But of course, some of the differentials here might be 0. So that's the catch. So you have to work a little harder to say that even though it's not a regular sequence, they're all, you might call it an almost regular sequence, that if you drop out the zeros, it's a regular sequence. So you have to make an argument like that. Another theorem you can prove with this point of view so supposing we have that X is the product of, again, K copies of Sn, times 1 copy Sn, n is less than n, and P is equal to 2. Then the rank of, and G is brought the proof of this a little bit, and then, now I'm finished. And then that'll give you the flavor of this more general statement. So there are two possibilities. If D2, or sorry, dm plus 1 of we call it xn, so xn generates hm sn, thought of as being in the cohomology x. So if this is non-zero, then when we look at the spectral sequence, we see that the entire line here is eliminated. This is then an injection. So the entire line here is eliminated, and so we have, and so we're left with simply that En plus 2 looks like is isomorphic with the product of H star, is product of n spheres times the cohomology of G modulo dm plus 1. And therefore, there's nothing, so now we have a situation where the lowest dimensional thing here is dimension n, and it goes into something at the bottom here, and every element is of order p in the bottom here, if we think over the integers. So every generator, for every generator, let's call it Zi of Hn Hn of x contained in En plus 1, En plus 2 it is, plus 1 times this 2, so P times Zi belongs to the image J star of Hn of x hat. Therefore, we have that, and of course, P is equal to 2, so this is 2 times Zi. And therefore, 2 to the k plus 1 times the top generator. The product of all of these is then in the image of J star. And so therefore the exponent is dividing, so the exponent divides 2 to the k plus 1. So that takes care of the case where the differential is non-zero. In the case where the differential is 0, if the differential of dm plus 1 of x n is equal to 0, we take a slightly different point of view. We in fact look at Postnikov's system. And so we have that x is mapping into the minus first term of the Postnikov system. And these are, and this is a G map. And G's acting freely and all that. And we make the calculation of the cohomology of xn minus 1. And this looks simply like the product of an exterior algebra on xn and then cohomology of group G. And so this cohomology has exponent p. Well, it's exponent 2 in this case. But looking at this vibration then, you can then deduce that the exponent. So in this vibration, all these other generators that come from the vibration with base xn minus 1, and you deduce from that that the exponent of x is equal to plus 1. They're all twice it is all the image from here, and from that we get the receiving image from xn minus 1 half, and therefore can produce this. So you need to use this little trick with the Postnikov system. And this leads to the following question. How can we, all these results have previously involved five-dimensional spaces. So question, if I wanted to do some kind of a induction, the way I did when I made this very strong geometrical hypothesis about vibrations with fibrous products of spheres, well, what I have naturally is are vibrations in the Postnikov system. And so how do we extend Smith-like theorems, if I may call it that. Smith-like theorems to terms of the Postnikov system. So we're now dealing with infinite dimensional spaces, and one has a lot of problems dealing with that. Of course, I don't know how to answer this question, so I don't have to go on any further in this lecture, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much. I should say I want to express my great sympathy with Santiago as the target of this kind of conference. He has to be appear to be awake at all times in case the speaker looks at him. So I know this is a very, very difficult thing, and I'd like to congratulate him.
Any questions or comments? No, we thank you. Immediately now, we have the official inauguration. It is tenemos la inauguración oficial en este mismo momento. Por favor, no se quédense en su lugar.
Bueno, vamos a dar comienzo a nuestra inauguración formal. Antes que todo les agradezco el haber venido y el que estén con nosotros. Les voy a leer esta pequeña cosa que dice que es muy rápida, así que no se asusten. Entonces les digo muy buenas tardes, estimados amigos y distinguidos miembros de esta mesa de honor. Es un placer dirigirme a ustedes para hacer la presentación de este primer Congreso Internacional de geometría, sistemas dinámicos y singularidades, con el que celebramos el 65º aniversario de Santiago López de Medrano. Muchos de ustedes tendrán la oportunidad de conocer en estas pláticas algunas de las aportaciones matemáticas, así como de sus cualidades como ser humano de nuestro homenajeado. No puedo olvidar de mencionar entonces a la gente que hizo posible que fuese posible este congreso, digo que fuese realidad este congreso y que hoy nos acompaña. Quiero agradecer entonces al doctor Ramón Peralta Ifavi, director de la Facultad de Ciencias, en sustitución de él está nuestra secretaria de Asuntos de Personal Académico, intercambio académico, personal académico, la doctora Luisa Alba Lois, y luego ya le agradezco a ella por separado otra vez, porque no esperaba yo esto. En representación del director del Instituto de Matemáticas, doctor Javier Bracho Carpizo, sí lo esperaba, al maestro en Ciencias Ángel Carrillo Hoyo, cual fue mi maestro en Geometría Analítica, al maestro en Ciencias Alejandro Bravo Mojica, coordinador del Consejo Departamental de Matemáticas, al doctor Alejandro Díaz Barriga, presidente de la Sociedad Matemática Mexicana. Como ya mencioné, gracias a ellos es posible que este encuentro se realice, pero también gracias al esfuerzo de las personas que nos dieron su apoyo y su trabajo. En número, no en orden de importancia, pero sí a todos los que nos ayudaron tanto. A la Secretaría de Asuntos de Personal Académico, a la doctora Luisa Alba Lois y su secretaria Claudia Cerón. En actividades culturales, al grupo del MOI, pues no tengo que hacer del MOI mucha presentación, pero principalmente a Nancy Mejía. En la coordinación de eventos, a Elena Abrín. En lo que se refiere a impresión de carteles y programa, al grupo de Mercedes Perelló y a la Chivis, ninguna preferencia, por las horas dedicadas por este evento, para que este evento salga y saldrá bien. A las alumnas Ingrid y Melissa por todo lo que nos ayudaron y siempre estuvieron dispuestas a estar con nosotros. Ahora, para terminar, pues quiero dar gracias a la gente que nos hace el honor de su visita, de acompañarnos y de presentar sus trabajos. Alejandro Allen, a Shirley Gomber, a William Brauder, a Silvia Capel, a Marcia Perón, a Nancy Smith, a Eugenio Friccione, a Beatriz Fuentes, a Samuel Hitler, Guillermo Gómez, Javier Gómez Mont, Francisco González Acuña, Pico, Rafael Herrera, Ana Margarita Guzmán, Miguel Lara, a Le Beltrán, a Lucía López de Medrano, a Lorán Erseman, Óscar Palmas, Salvador Pérez Esteban, Alberto Berkowski, que ustedes ya lo tuvieron oportunidad de conocerlo, y a Elmar Wickenkemper. Desafortunadamente no nos puede acompañar Marcel Nicolau, a quien le deseamos el pronto restablecimiento de su esposa, y por diferentes razones al doctor Sullivan, que tuvo que cancelar su plática, que lamentablemente no pudimos aún oír. Ahora, pues doy la palabra en el orden que había yo escrito a la doctora Luisa Alba Lois, quien dirá unas palabras para ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, señor. Bueno, muy buenas tardes. A nombre del director de la Facultad de Ciencias, el doctor Ramón Peralta Ifavi, envío un caluroso saludo al doctor López de Medrano y su disculpa por no poder compartir con ustedes esta ceremonia del 65º aniversario de Santiago. Estás muy joven todavía, Santiago. El doctor Peralta Ifavi se encuentra en estos momentos en la recepción y entrega de las instalaciones del edificio de Relaciones Exteriores en Tlatelolco, que se da a la UNAM, donde se instalarán las oficinas del Memorial de 1968, donde se tratará de llevar a cabo estudios, investigaciones y donde hoy se recordará el movimiento estudiantil, tan cercano a todos los que estuvimos y participamos en él y que indudablemente es parte de la historia de Santiago. aunque creo que él en esa época no estaba en Ciudad de México, sino cursando sus estudios de posgrado en la Universidad de Princeton, pero que después ha tenido, como todos sabemos, una fuerte participación política en los movimientos estudiantiles democráticos del país. El doctor, bueno, yo quisiera decir que conozco muy bien a Santiago, porque Santiago y yo hace 40 años fuimos vecinos durante muchos años, y aparte de unirnos los antecedentes españoles de hijos de refugiados españoles, compartimos también actividades políticas dentro de la facultad. Bueno, entonces paso ahora a mencionar el gran currículum que tiene Santiago, muy impresionante, y que la mayoría lo conocen, pero no está de más recordar. El doctor López de Medrano cursó la carrera de Matemáticas en la Facultad de Ciencias de la UNAM, obteniendo el título en 1964 con la tesis